You are now listening to the Unscripted Ohio Podcast, brought to you by Buckeye Grove. For all the latest Buckeyes news, analysis, reaction, and the best Ohio State community on the entire internet, head over to BuckeyeGrove.com or follow us on Twitter at Ohio State Rivals. Without any further delay, it's time to get unscripted, broadcasting from Podcast Central, a place that is not his mother's basement.
Hey, Mom! We get some meatloaf!
We promise. Here's your host, Kyle Lamb.
Hey, Mom! The meatloaf!
Okay, I'm here with Jeff Snook now, and Jeff, of course, is the guy that broke the story yesterday, the bombshell, the other side of the story, so to speak. Courtney Smith, the one that she did not tell, but the other side, Lynn Bruce, Zach's mother, and Tina Carano confirming some of this story. That is, of course, Courtney's mother. So, Jeff, first I want to ask, tell us about yourself a little bit and your background and your career for those that maybe not familiar with your work.
Yeah, I just put something on Facebook recently. I got some critics out there as far as my resume goes. They think I'm just a fan that decided to write a little Facebook post yesterday, I guess. I did graduate from Ohio State, I admit that. So, anyway, got a degree in journalism in 1982, and I started right into the newspaper business that very next week. I covered the Southwest Conference, which is now extinct, for 2 years as a beat. In 82 and 83, I went to the Palm Beach Post in 84, and I got 17 years newspaper experience, including about 14 years as a beat, football beat, college football beat. So I got some experience at reporting, and then, now I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I broke my share of stories back in the day when I had a daily beat. So anyway, I just happened to leave the newspaper business to write books. As a freelance writer, and I could do that as far as not needing the weekly paycheck or to deal with a sports editor or a boss. And as you know, the newspaper business has changed dramatically over the last 20 years.
Yeah, certainly has.
I feel like I got out at the right time to do that, but I still, do have some reporting skills and some experience at it. And I sort of want to make that clear. With a lot of people reading Facebook too, they don't know that. They just think I could be a fan or somebody on Facebook posting whatever I want. But I rely on my ethics and standards, and I've always been taught you don't write one-source stories, and I try not to use anonymous sources. I want somebody on the record. I want them identified, which I did yesterday. I had two more sources telling me the same thing. They would not go on the record, so I didn't use them. And so that's just part of the standards that I abide by, and I believe in them.
Well, Jeff, I think a lot of people appreciate your efforts. So I want to ask you, do you have any theories as to why nobody else, Brett McMurphy included, has bothered to chase down this side of the story?
Well, Brett McMurphy had one source that was the counter product of my sources. And I do have theories of why nobody since his original reporting. And let me be clear, he's got a fine resume. Brett's broken stories over the years, and his track record speaks for himself. I think he could have gone a little further in his original reporting, but he didn't want to lose his scoop, and that's understandable. But when you receive text, and he was in possession of the text from Shelley Meyer that he was in charge, that he had, he did have a duty to go to her and talk to her about it. And probably Ian Smith and Urban Meyer as well. I'm sure Urban, knowing what he possessed, if Jerry Emig would have made that, and Jerry Emig, by the way, is the sports information director, would have received the request that he needed him one-on-one and he had certain information, my guess is Urban Meyer would have sat down with him. And he was in Columbus for 3 days. So he could have got a little more. But, I'm not here to throw stones at him at all. He's a fine reporter. But as far as the follow-up on that, I think a lot of sports editors, they're scared during the Me Too movement that there's a perception you would be attacking a domestic abuse victim. And so they shy away from even pursuing it. And I've said many times, this isn't the Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby case where there's 20 and 30 and multiple accusers that cannot possibly be making these things up or not telling the truth. There's too much evidence. There's one single accuser here, and her credibility may or may not be in question. But when you have her own mother going on the record as she did with me, and by the way, since my story has been published, I have a lot more information backing this up. I've chose not to make public because to me it's redundant, and there's no sense piling on. But I've received much more information since my story appeared yesterday, reinforcing and backing all this up. But like I said, I'm not going to beat a dead horse and write another story about the same thing with new sources. It makes no sense to do that.
Jeff, I'm curious how you came about this information. Was it something you went looking for, or did you get a tip? How did that all transpire?
Well, I'm not going to really get into how we first connected, but for getting, I guess, criticized as I have been because I'm an Ohio State graduate, the other side of that is, if you think about it, if you got sources in the Ohio State community, who are they going to be most comfortable talking to? So, a writer somewhere else in the country they don't know, or me, who they've known for years and they can trust I'll do the right thing and present a fair, accurate account of it. So the advantage of being around Ohio State for a long time is I think they're familiar with me, some of these people, and they felt more comfortable talking to me than they would somebody else. So that's the other side of the coin that I'm an Ohio State graduate, and which is people have used as ammunition against me in this story.
Lynn stated in your story that she had personally observed Courtney becoming physically aggressive with Zach. Is that her stance?
Well, yeah, and here's another part of this. I had many more incidents that were hearsay. So when I say hearsay, Zach Smith told somebody else, which could be Lynn or other people. So it's a second-party account of what went on. I chose not to use those because they were hearsay. I wanted to quote the people that saw what they saw, and that's Lynn Bruce, basically, and Tina Carano corroborating this. But you should be using first-hand accounts, trumping what you would say second-hand hearsay accounts. So, but yes, that's the crux of what I learned.
Okay, and so when she stated that she knew Courtney had taken pictures after these incidents where Zach was trying to move her out of the way, then she is stating, firsthand knowledge that those pictures were taken after such incidents, right?
Yeah, I don't think she knows exactly when the pictures were taken. Nobody that I know I've talked to knows when the pictures were taken. I don't know if they're date stamped or what, but that's a good question. When were the pictures that she gave Brett McMurphy? When were they actually taken? Were they after the 2015 incident? Were they earlier? And I'm sure Brett McMurphy probably knows, and maybe he put it in there. I don't know. I don't have his story in front of me.
And so I want to be clear, and I know you had this in the report, but I just, for clarity's sake in the interview here, so I want to be clear, Tina did confirm, Courtney's mother, she did confirm that Courtney was the aggressor of these attacks and vowed to take down Zach in time.
Yes, that is true. Just the way you worded it, she also believes, and let me be clear, there's several forms of domestic abuse, which could be grabbing, throwing, choking, pushing. But as she said, and his mother, Lynn Bruce, said, their belief is he never once struck her with a fist, a hand, an open hand, in any form as a punch. So, but I know that's not the only qualifications for domestic abuse. So I don't want to make that distinction and have people think I condone domestic abuse or violence. Of course not. So, from what they have said, many of these encounters, Zach was not the aggressor, and he was trying to either get out of a situation or get beyond the situation. Sometimes when she's blocking him in a narrow path, maybe he could. Maybe he's late for a meeting, as she had told me in that incident on the steps and so forth. So there's always 2 to 3 sides to every story.
And so, and obviously, to be upfront, you mentioned that she is estranged. Now, Tina is estranged from her daughter, Courtney, and that was explained that it was due to these allegations. Is that correct?
Well, actually, to clear that up a little bit, I've talked to her since a couple of times, and she intimated to me that they were estranged even before this. This just added fuel to the fire. but there was an incident maybe in May between her and her mother and her grandmother that led to the estrangement. And like I said, I'm not going to pile on her but I do have much more information since my story was posted. But their estrangement began maybe pre-summer or pre-scandal, as you would, and then it's carried through this. And this certainly, this mess here has not helped their relationship any.
So you mentioned that Tina had stopped responding after a couple of text messages, you verifying some things with her. Was there more that you would have been able to print and more you could have corroborated had she maybe continued speaking?
Yes. She had a rough day yesterday. There's other things besides this going on in her life, and she was limited by her time. It's not, I don't think that you got to bear in mind, she's got 2 grandchildren with her daughter. She wants to be able to see those kids as time goes forward. So she's very hesitant to speak. At the same time, she knows the truth, and she wants the truth to come out because she believes in it. She hates to see people lose their jobs and livelihoods or reputations unjustly. So given that she's her own mother, she's in a very, very difficult position.
Jeff, I want to ask you about the Powell Police Department. Something I was not clear from your story, but I want you to clarify this a little more. So you reported there were 9 calls to Powell Police in a span of 6 years, 2012 to 2018, and that Powell would not release those reports. Did they at least confirm the number of calls from Courtney in that time frame?
No, I believe the number of calls is far greater than that, but I do not have that number.
Okay.
No, I do not.
So nine is the number that Lynn stated. Is that correct?
No, 9 is the number that's been previously reported. I think the Cleveland Plain Dealer, Cleveland.com, broke that originally from 2012 to 2018.
Okay.
She had nine calls to Powell itself. There's other departments that were involved maybe before or later on. They weren't all to Powell, but there was 9 that no charges came out of those 9. And that is very crucial to this whole story as it relates to Ohio State. I've said over and over again, it's not Urban Meyer's job or Gene Smith's job to go sit down with an assistant coach's estranged wife and talk to her about what may or may not have happened. That's not their job. They would be negligent by doing that because they could be looked upon as impeding the investigation or tampering with evidence or tampering and prejudging the investigation. Their job is to rely on law enforcement, which here, in this case would be the Powell Police, and what they found out. What did they discover? Do they have evidence for charges? Do they believe our employee or do they believe the accuser? And I'm sure they did that here, crossed their T's and dotted their I's. So in relation to the investigation, that's the crucial matter. And you can read between the lines. If there was 9 calls and no charges, and yet they responded to every call and did an investigation, what does that tell you?
Did Lynn have any firsthand insight or conversations with Courtney about the conversations that she had allegedly with Shelley Meyer or any of those coaches' wives?
You talking about the text from Shelley Meyer?
Yeah, the text messages, correct.
Yeah, Lynn doesn't know specifics about those texts. She was just presuming or guessing what they may be, and she happened to input Shelley's background and education and work as a psychiatric nurse into the equation, that maybe she was trying to help calm her down or appease her, or maybe bring her off the ledge and make the matter just, I guess, turn down the temperature a little bit, for lack of other words. And so, only Shelley can answer that question, which I'm sure she will someday. But when she has the line in there, I keep bringing up, "He scares me." Well, that's damning as far as Zach Smith goes. So if she just threw that in there to try to relate to her or gain her confidence, I have no idea.
As far as the 2009 incident, what was Lynn's stance on Earl Bruce's involvement, if any, with that 2009?
Yeah,
complaint?
I made that very clear in the story, and Lynn's very credible here. That's her father. But when 2009 happened, and Courtney Smith called Lynn and said, "Your son's in jail. He beat me," or whatever he did, and it was the day before Father's Day. So Lynn had plans with Earl the next day because it was Father's Day, and she said, "Listen, I can't make these plans. I have to drive down to Gainesville to deal with a situation." Well, Earl volunteered to go. When they arrived, Earl went right to the coach's office and talked to Urban and Zach Smith, and Lynn went right to Courtney. They never crossed paths again. Earl Bruce did not have anything to do with Courtney Smith or see her on that visit or talk to her over the phone. That was very, very clear. So when you look at her interviews with the Brett Murphy and on camera and saying Earl Bruce tried to talk her out of pressing charges, Lynn will tell you that's a flat-out lie. So if she's lying about that, now that asks another question. What else?
So, Jeff, obviously I don't want you to speculate or guess, but in chasing down these leads, do you have any insider knowledge as to, from any of your sources or anybody you've talked to, with where or how Brett may have received the original 2015 complaint? Any knowledge where that came from?
No, I have no knowledge how Brett McMurphy conducted his investigation.
Okay. No. And so, last thing I want to ask you, you kind of alluded to this earlier, saying you think there's there's a lot more that you have not been come on the record about, and other things that you've not been able to substantiate. Do you believe there is more to this story that is yet to be substantiated, or other things that will come out during discovery or maybe in court with the protection order case?
Well, the court case is going to play out, and as it will, and some of my story yesterday might give you an indication of where it's going to end up. As far as the Ohio State investigation, I can't speak on their behalf. Those 6 committee members, I don't know what they're looking at exactly, or if they're going to get off on these tangents and this peripheral matter, or they're going to stick to the crux of the matter, which is Urban Meyer, Gene Smith, and their former employee, Zach Smith. What they do, when they do it, did they follow protocol? That's probably what should be their concern, and make a determination from those facts, not the relationship between Courtney and Zach. I don't know how much that's going to play into it. So anyway, we'll see as time plays out.
Well, Jeff, thank you for your time, and thank you for all of your professional work. And this was certainly a very alarming story from the other side, and it's given a lot of people a lot to chew on. So thanks for your work, and thanks for taking the time to speak about it today.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
You can get new episodes of Unscripted Ohio on Mondays and Fridays exclusively at BuckeyeGrove.com or anytime on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all things Ohio State.